the former first-round draft pick of Washington. He then went to Pittsburgh. He was working out in South Florida with teammates, wide receivers, trying to get to the same page before flying back up to Pennsylvania. He's working out over the weekend. Apparently, his car broke down or had some car trouble on the highway in South Florida, and then reportedly tried to cross over on foot multiple lanes of traffic and was unfortunately killed by a truck that had hit him. A terrible, terrible, tragic story that just, your heart sinks. He's only 25 years old, still had a career and a life ahead of him, and far too young. And it just is heartbreaking to hear of that. And football is the last thing you think about. You hear a story like that and you immediately think about the person and the life and not the football. The football is so ancillary here. And so it was a weird weekend because Adam Schefter tweeted out this news and included in the news that he had been challenged to live up to the expectations. He was falling short of the expectations. And a lot of people got really upset with Adam Schefter that it felt very insensitive at a time that deserves a lot of sensitivity. Why bring up that he has struggled in football? And I understood those people. I did. I understood why. Why do you attach whether he's good or bad at football right now to just the fact that a young man passed away tragically? It just seemed unnecessary, and Schefter deleted the tweet and then reissued the tweet and issued an apology. But that was nothing compared to Gil Brandt, who's a former NFL executive, a long, long time NFL executive, a Hall of Fame executive with the Dallas Cowboys, who's been an analyst for a number of years and did a radio spot that day. And his commentary was beyond the pale. And when I heard it, I really could not believe a football analyst would say this on the day we learned about a young man passing away.
I hate any time anybody is killed or anybody dies. But he was a guy that was living to be dead, so to speak. They told him, don't under any circumstances leave school early. You just don't have the work habits. You don't have this. You don't have that. What did he do? Left school early. I always can remember this. We invited players to the draft, and he was one of the players we invited to the draft. And we were told, no, we're going to have our own party. His own party was a party at the bowling alley, charged him $50 to get into the bowling alley for his party. It was always something, It's one of those things. I'm never offside, but they keep calling me for offside. Is what it is. So, it's a tragic thing. Anytime anybody dies, it's tragic. And especially when you're 24 years old and you got your whole life ahead of you. Maybe if he'd have stayed in school a year, he wouldn't do silly things. I mean, when you're jogging on a highway, on a road like that leaves it open, because I tell you, it's so, guy has 2 drinks and he's just a little bit to the right side of the road and gets hit and killed. It's easy to happen.
I hesitated to even play that clip for you from Gil Brandt, but I thought it was significant, and I thought there was a lesson there, so I wanted to play it for you. Gil Brandt is a Pro Football Hall of Famer. He's in the Hall of Fame as an executive. He helped create scouting in the NFL and draft. He, along with Tom Landry and company, revolutionized Tech Schramm, the way that you scouted and developed and drafted and used the draft and built a roster. That the Cowboys of the 60s and 70s were so far ahead of everybody else in that type of stuff, and Gil Brandt was a big part of that. Gil Brandt's also 90 years old. So Gil's been around for a long time and been doing interviews for a long time, so he should know better. But I think what is startling about that is that Dwayne Haskins did have a career, a very short career, that perhaps did not live up to where he was drafted. And he wasn't the perfect quarterback. He made mistakes. He clearly made enough mistakes for Washington not to want to keep him around. Last year in Pittsburgh, again, there was certainly a need for a young quarterback to step up and become the next, and Haskins still wasn't quite there, which is why they have Mason Rudolph and thinking about drafting another quarterback. So Haskins had a series of football negatives. But what this illuminates is how there are people, maybe more people than not, that are in football, because this happened from Adam Schefter, who reported it, and then Gil Brandt, who's been in football for 80 years or 70 years. And it is the inability to separate the football performance from the human's life. And that this is a really tough thing for people to disconnect. That when hearing news about Dwayne Haskins, the initial thought for these people is, well, the only thing they know about him, which is football, and that he wasn't very good at football in this kind of small synopsis. But if all we know about Dwayne Haskins is that he was a first-round draft pick, washed out of Washington, in Pittsburgh, maybe has made some mistakes. You know, Gil Brandt brings up his draft party, okay? And I think that there's been people around him that thought that perhaps his dad was an issue. I've spoken about that I thought his dad kind of led him down a path that wasn't best suited for success, that there was some family issues there, perhaps wanting Dwayne Haskins to be something that he wasn't, perhaps wanting to monetize Dwayne Haskins, perhaps wanting to push him into stardom before he was ready, whatever that is. That overrides the thoughtfulness that goes into, but a young man died, so what does it matter anymore? Who cares what he charged for his draft party? Who cares, if he came out of school too early? Like it's so unimportant. And maybe this happens again with people that are built to only look at things through a sports lens, like a Gil Brandt, like an Adam Schefter, that are just wired football, to only view things through the football lens. But, it's funny because for me, I'm certainly not saying I'm above the fray of making mistakes, but I could have never come on the airwaves the next day and talked about Dwayne Haskins football. That it just would not have felt right to talk about what happened in Washington, what is happening in Pittsburgh, what happened on draft night. It just, that wouldn't have been where I would go. And I think it's important just for people from my standpoint, for people in the media, to always remember, there's football and there's plenty of time to talk about football. But there's also a human, and when human stuff is at work, to just try with all your might to leave that there. And again, I'm not saying that I'm above it. I'm sure I've melded the two multiple times. But in this case, it was so tragic. And it's like you hear this news that Dwayne Haskins passes away because he gets hit by a truck trying to walk across a roadway for whatever reason. We don't know. And the last thing that we should be thinking about is football mistakes that he had made. That just was not supposed to be part of the conversation. And I saw people on social media say, this is how football players and athletes get commodified, that they're just commodities. They're just, you draft them and you cut them and you trade them and you play them and you bench them, and that's all you see. And live or die, divorce or happiness, love or heartbreak, children or not, like you just don't view them as anything more than a commodity. And perhaps that's true here. Perhaps that's true. But I think more than that, it's just, I don't think Schefter and Gil Brandt are heartless, terrible villains. I think they just got caught in, through football lens, this is who we know him to be. When in reality, it has nothing to do with the story, which is he lost his life. And that's the only thing that really is the context needed here. It's a tragic moment that shouldn't have happened to a young man that had a life ahead of him, whether he was good at football or not.